When Bill Clinton was president of the United States, and John Paul II was the Pope of the Catholic Church, and Mario Cuomo was the governor of New York, the call to the priesthood came to a high school student outside of Rochester named Scott Vanderveer. And that's how God works. Not in the halls of power, necessarily. God comes to ordinary people when no one is realizing it and changes our lives one at a time. That's what we hear in the gospel, is that when all of these people were in power, the word of God came to John in the desert. I wonder if anybody knew that it happened. I wonder if anyone could have noticed. Was there a sign at all that happened? I can tell you that on the day that I felt that first call to the priesthood, no one else in church knew that it happened. It happened right there in the winter of 1993. But there was no sign that someone would have noticed. There was nothing that would have tipped you off. It quietly happened. Where were you when you met the love of your life? Do you remember? When it happened, did everyone in the coffee shop gasp? What's happening right now? Did the lights at the school dance all go down as a big spotlight shined on you and that other person? Did angels descend and blow trumpets? A lot of us don't realize that God is showing up in a situation because there's no pyrotechnics. It starts so simply. I think I'm going to ask that girl to dance. Do you want to join us for church before we go to brunch on Sunday? What if being a priest would actually fit me better than being a journalist? We see these kind of stories all the time. Very simple messages from God, easy to ignore. I think about St. Joseph a lot. I have a feeling that 9 out of 10 people would have told Joseph, if your fiancée is pregnant and you know it's not yours, you got to get out of that relationship. But Joseph had a dream. What's less concrete than a dream that he should not leave Mary? He listened to the dream. How many of us could possibly do that? One of our parishioners was living in another part of New York State and came to Glens Falls a couple of years ago to visit a friend. And as she was getting off at exit 18, she saw a giant rainbow. And she said, oh my gosh. It was one of the brightest rainbows she'd ever seen. An hour later, while in Glens Falls, she saw another rainbow, even brighter than the last one. She went to lunch with her friend, and then she saw a third rainbow the same day. Within a couple of months, she moved here. True story. She could not ignore that message. It was subtle. There were no words associated with it, but the message was clear. You may say to yourself, I could never do that. I'm not that kind of person. I want to be hit over the head. I want things to be crystal clear. But we hear in the gospel that we have to make straight God's paths. We have to smooth the way that God travels to us, which I think is a way to say we need to work on making ourselves easily coachable. We don't want to be too hard-headed, too stiff-necked. We want to be easy to guide. We don't want to make God have to work so hard. Couldn't we have figured it out after the first rainbow? Do we have to make God give us 3? But of course, a lot of us need a lot more than just that. I mentioned Pope John Paul II at the beginning, and he said something that we talk about in seminary life all the time. He said 30 years ago, there's a very easy test to figure out for a priest if you're doing a good job or not. There's lots of things that could be good or bad in lots of different areas, of course, but there's one basic test. Are you a bridge for people to get to God, or are you more of a barricade? What a question, huh? Are you a bridge that people can travel over to get to God, or are you a barricade, a block? Are you standing in the way? Can people travel to God quickly and easily and smoothly through you? What a question for all of us. This Christmas at St. Mary's, we're putting a real focus on trying to reach people using this gospel as our guide, to make the way straight. We'd like this to be a year when we come to Christmas and we don't recognize a lot of the people that are here because they haven't been to church in years. We'd love to get everybody who gave up on faith a long time ago, but just are gonna say, well, why don't I give it a try? You know, I've tried a lot of other things and they're kind of all dead ends. Maybe I'll go to St. Mary's. And one of the things I wrote about in the bulletin this week that you can read when you pick it up is just for us to brainstorm, who maybe needs an invitation to come with us? Who's somebody we could invite? Do you want to come with me to Mass? And we can use whatever reason we want. Before dinner, do you want to come to Mass before dinner? We could say, I don't want to sit alone. Do you want to sit with me? We could say whatever felt like the best thing to use as a bridge for that person. But wouldn't it be interesting for us to do that? The question we're asking ourselves is about the distance between ourselves and God this week. How smooth is the highway that bridges that distance? Does God need four-wheel drive to get to us? Are we living in some remote place where we've just got boulders on the driveway to get to us and God's got to shift into all sorts of gears? Does God have to put chains on the tires in order to get to us? Is there anything we could do to smooth that out so it's not so much work? How about between us and others? How likely would someone be to say yes to an invitation to come to church with us? Of course, we're not going to know unless we try, but even if they've never been to church before, would their knowing us make them say, well, he's an awfully nice person. She sure is wonderful. Why wouldn't I go with them? One of the things we're working on between now and Christmas is to do something with the front of the church with some lights. We've got some new lighting ideas for what we're going to do for the week leading up to Christmas with the front of the church, and we're praying and hoping that it's going to work out. It's going to be a way for people to imagine coming to St. Mary's in a way that they never have before. And the reason we're doing it is simple. We want to make straight the highway that leads here for people who don't know how to find God and have maybe given up on trying. Because we want to not have to make God have to use fireworks to get our attention. Isn't 3 rainbows enough?